Welcome, everyone, to today's town hall on peer tutoring as a high impact practice. I'm Julia Michaels, Director of Development and Strategic Partnerships for UERU, the Association for Undergraduate Education at Research Universities. I'm really excited about today's conversation because we'll be looking at this practice of peer tutoring from a couple of different lenses. And the overall aim here is to really share with you all how this practice can help your institution achieve your goals for student retention, student success. And this is all in alignment with UERU's mission on undergraduate education. So we here at UERU are tremendously grateful to our Boyer Circle partners at Knack, who we've been collaborating with for a number of years now, and who have helped design today's conversation to be valuable to all of you. Throughout the event today, it is an open Zoom meeting, so please feel free to ask questions either in the chat or by raising your hand, and we can call on you. We'll also have ample time at the end for questions and discussion. So I'm going to start by asking our panelists to introduce themselves, beginning with Candice.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Candice Calhoun-Butts, and I'm the Assistant Vice Provost here in the Division of Student Success at the University of Texas at Arlington. It's good to be with you all today.
Good afternoon. I'm Robin Gore. I'm the Vice Chancellor for Student Success at Missouri University of Science and Technology.
Hi, everyone. I'm Paige Keller, Vice President of Academic Relations here at Knack.
Good afternoon, all. I'm George Koo, so-called retired faculty member at Indiana, where I served for 34 years. A few years after that, the University of Illinois with the National Institute for Learning Outcomes Assessment. Some of you may have my name associated with the NSSE, the National Survey of Student Engagement, or the topic for the day, high impact practices. I'm also presently a senior advisor to Knack.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here today. I'm going to turn it over to Paige Keller from Knack to give some opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Julia. I wanted to start out by giving a quick overview of what we do at Knack and how we partner with institutions for those of you who are not familiar with us. So there will be some added context to the conversations we're having today with George, Robin, and Candice. At Knack, we like to say we're the Uber for peer tutoring. We connect students who need help with classmates who've already succeeded in those same courses. And the way we do it is quickly and easily. Our model makes academic support accessible to every student, not just those who can afford private tutoring or even know where to find help. So by partnering directly with colleges and universities, tutoring becomes free and convenient and built into the student experience. And really the impact goes both ways. Peer tutors don't just reinforce what they've learned to others, they actually develop leadership and communication and career-ready skills that set them apart after graduation. In short, Knack expands access and builds confidence and creates a culture where students lift each other up. So what we are going to do today is, with our featured panelists, we are going to talk about 3 significant challenges we are all seeing across higher ed and how our Knack and UERU partners are tackling those challenges. Everything I'm about to share is no surprise to any of you, but I just want to lead the conversation with talking briefly about these 3 challenges. For the first challenge, we know that students' increasingly diverse experiences and circumstances mean that when they struggle, it impacts both their success and institutional outcomes like persistence and completion. And today's learners for Challenge 2 are balancing so much more than just classes, yet many support models still expect them to show up in one place at one time. And that just doesn't fit how students live and learn anymore. And finally, we all know that college can feel isolating, especially for students like first gen and underrepresented students. And when they don't feel connected or confident, it's much harder for them to persist. So let's get started with the first challenge, and that's persistence and completion. For
Which
years,
is,
oh, go ahead, George. Did you want to jump in here?
well, I do want to jump in here.
Okay.
For years, we've had to address what this slide suggests is an academic readiness gap. We've added the word new here because there are some additional things that have happened, primarily COVID, that have exacerbated students being academically prepared at the level to succeed in college. This second bullet, for example, the American College Testing Program for literally decades has demonstrated that sometimes up to half of entering college students do not read at college level, which then affects their performance in math and in all areas. The number of students taking, we're using the word here, remedial coursework, is very, very high, at least 2/5. And then we have numerous, really overwhelming numbers of anecdotal reports from faculty saying that students are underprepared, and especially since COVID now, just to put a little nuance to this, every generation of faculty members say the current generation of students is not as well prepared as the previous one. So we take this with a grain of salt, but the point is still valid. We have really significant challenges helping students do college level work. Let's go to the next slide, please. Now we have some ideas for how to manage and, if you will, accelerate students' progress through college, all students, in fact. And this is something I'm very familiar with, the notion of high impact practices, which we began to study the impact of participating in these kinds of activities back, I don't know, it's now 20 years ago almost. So we know that a student who's done a high impact practice, and there are a range of these things. We're going to emphasize peer tutoring a little bit later, but there's a range of these things from participating in a well-designed first-year seminar to doing research with a faculty member, community service, community action kinds of projects, study away, and so forth. And so when students do one or more of these, they are more likely to finish what they start, as Paige is saying as the heading for this particular segment, persisting and completing, earning a degree. If you do a high impact practice, students who do them, they have salutary effects for students who come from low income or less well prepared academically backgrounds. If you're in a high impact practice, this is one of my favorite points here, the psychological size of the institution tends to shrink. That is, you now are members of perhaps multiple affinity groups. Notice the connection here with peers, which will continue to underscore throughout this hour together. So there's a stronger likelihood that one develops a sense of belonging, sees themselves as part of something that is familiar and positive for them. And they also put students in situations where they actually have a chance, well, not have a chance, they're required, very important, to apply what they've been learning inside and outside the classroom. And finally, on this point, students who do 2 or more of these high impact practices, they have what we call cumulative additive effects. That is, they benefit even more. Let's go to the next slide, please, and link this directly to peer tutoring now. We identified some years ago, as we've continued this work on high impact practices, the features, what makes a particular activity high impact. And we've identified these, I don't know if there are 8 here, I think there are. I'm not going to go through these in any great detail. What I'm trying to emphasize here is, if peer tutoring is to qualify as a HIP, and if the peer tutors are to realize the benefits that participating in a HIP delivers, then we need to make certain that we are setting their performance expectations at high levels. We know that peer tutoring over the course of an academic term or longer demands a significant investment of effort. And over this extended period of time, very, very important. One of the great benefits, the kind of one of the natural elements of peer tutoring is it keeps the peer tutors involved in substantive matters, particularly if they're getting feedback from supervisors. I'm going to be emphasizing this several times, the notion of making certain that your peer tutors rather, are getting the kind of feedback from supervisors and peers that will help them develop further the competencies that we're promising. Paige mentioned diversity, very, very important piece of this, much better for peer tutors to have a variety of experience with students from different backgrounds, as well as different areas of study. And here's this point about feedback. Can't emphasize this enough. And what we found from subsequent studies is that peer tutors who have regular feedback from supervisors benefit to a much greater extent than peer tutors who do not. And the problem here is that typically less than 40% of peer tutors have this kind of ongoing relationship with a supervisor. Well, you can finish off these. I'll just mention this last one, which again is related to feedback and meeting with supervisors and others who are in a position to help students think more deeply about what's happening to them. The notion of reflecting on what they are learning from the peer tutor experience. Robin, let's move on to you.
Thank you, Dr. Koo. As you've indicated, we are all chasing the same metrics, right? Increased retention, if you want to go ahead and advance the slide, increased metrics on retention and persistence of our student success. We, about 4 years ago, identified tutoring as maybe an underserved resource for our students, where more than half of our students were not seeking tutoring services. So we are in our 3rd year now of working with Knack. We added at the fall of 2023 because we were struggling in covering tutoring options for all of our degree programs and with getting students engaged with tutoring. And the reason for that is our students at S&T, they tend to be very introverted. They're very humble. They're very smart, but very humble and studious and academically driven. Many of them had not needed academic assistance in high school. And so many of our students are very embarrassed and maybe unsure about how to seek support for tutoring. And so we really found for us that Knack was a quieter way for those students, more private, to seek out that tutoring support. And as you can see on this slide, we have seen a 33% increase of our course confidence for students using tutoring through our Knack platform. You can also see on this slide some of our goals that we set out after, including really wanting to help the student sense of academic support, increasing their academic GPA and academic performance, offering them another way to receive tutoring, and I'll talk about our other modalities in a minute, but then also providing tutoring that is diverse. Right, we don't want to serve students in the same cookie cutter way. This provided us a different way to help our students get academic support. Go ahead and advance to the next slide.
I will, Robin, but I wanted
Yes.
to just touch quickly on that increase in course confidence and wanted to mention, because I think it's appropriate to share here, that we do provide a robust assessment and evaluation feature, or features plural, for the tutors and the students. And one of those is that post-session recap. So after every single tutoring session, both the tutor and the student are required to not only write a typed out recap of what they covered in the session, but the tutors evaluate on a scale of 1 to 10, how did this session feel? How do you think it went? And what was your confidence in the course material you delivered? What was your confidence level delivering that material to the student, conveying to the student what they needed to better understand about it. And then on the student end, they do the same thing, but they rate their confidence level prior to the session and then again after the session. And this was one of those asks by one of our partners. They said, we care about persistence, we care about pass rates, we care about DFWs, but we want to know what the student is gaining from those individual sessions. So we provided this as a service, as an assessment for every single one of our partners through our platform now. And I love that 33% increase. That's incredible.
Right. Go ahead and thank you. So we did pull our GPA and retention statistics, and I wanted to provide you with a snapshot of our most recent semester. You can see that we did have a GPA lift in all of our academic groups. The biggest lift certainly in that first year group, our freshmen. And that's no surprise because our first year students tend to struggle more with knowing how to study, how to be academically prepared, how to take tests. And so that's quite impressive to see that big of a GPA lift. Also very happy with when we ran retention data that we are seeing higher retention for our first year cohort with students who have accessed Knack for both semesters of their first year. So for our fall to spring retention, we had a 92% this last year. And for our fall to spring, from the fall to spring, and then from spring to fall, we came in at 88.8% for those students who use Knack. We did come in really great overall for our first year retention, 88.4%. But as I said, we're all chasing just those little, percentage points to increase that retention. And so this really is showing us students that are using Knack and academically achieving are helping our overall retention rate.
Yeah,
Candice, go ahead.
This is incredible. This is incredibly impactful. And we don't know what prompts a student to seek tutoring. The motivation levels are certainly different, but even though we definitely see a greater difference in the freshman grade point averages that you see here on the screen, that 0.03 point difference, that slight difference among seniors who did and didn't, that's significant because those seniors are likely seeking tutoring for different reasons than the freshmen and the sophomores are. So I would love to even dig into this further with those students to learn their motivation for attending, because that might encourage other students to engage in tutoring as well. So I love seeing this. So thank you, Robin. Candice, let's pass it over to you. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing on your campus with regard to persistence and completion.
Great. Thank you, Paige and Robin. And here at UT Arlington, we like to say the margins matter because that's saving 1 to 2 students, like even in some cases more than that. So I love to see that from our peer in Missouri. So here at UT Arlington, let me share just a little bit of information about our institution. So we are roughly a campus of 46,000 students. We're an R1 public institution. Of that 46,000 students, 34,000, slightly over 34,000 are undergraduate students. So a large population of students that we have, and the need for support. We too see a high number of students not participating in tutoring or any academic support in that way. And I'll share a little bit more on a future slide, but Knack was really kind of pivotal for us to find ways to bring accessibility for those students. So we launched Knack back in spring of 2023. With only 10 STEM courses. That was kind of our focus. Like, where do we start? We had to start somewhere. And my predecessor really kind of honed in on those STEM courses where students were struggling in math and science and computer science, really in the arts and sciences. The STEM courses is where we wanted to focus. We then thought a little bit bigger to say what other areas of the institution may need support. And at the time, I was the assistant dean in the College of Nursing and Health Innovation, and we had a very large online population, around 16,000 students. And my predecessor and I got together to say, let's offer these to our online nursing students. And that went really well. We started to see success and movement across not just undergrad, but graduate courses as well, which was really kind of encouraging and surprising for us as well to say, oh, our graduate students need this level of support as well. Um, so when I then transitioned into my role in 2024 as the assistant vice provost, I was like, why not expand it? Let's think big. And we expanded Knack services to both our online and campus-based students, both in our accelerated online programs and our traditional kind of in-residence programs. And as you can see, actually hot off the press page today, I got an update on the student contact hours. 2,200 students over the last week have engaged in Knack. So it's super exciting that we're seeing lots of momentum, students taking advantage, really offering a diverse option for students has been kind of life altering for so many of them. And we hear lots of great feedback. Over 1,500 sessions completed and growing. In fact, this fall we did some additional data. We had a 500% increase in student participation. So it's amazing for our campus. It's just truly amazing. And what you see there is 37% increase in confidence after having a Knack session. And what that shows for us is that students are intimidated by the process of kind of raising their hand to say that they need support. And Knack has just been a vehicle, a medium to support students where they are and help them succeed. So super excited about all the data that supports what we already knew needed to happen, Paige, but the data really supports that.
That's incredible, Candice. And before we move on to the next slide, I just wanted to point out that I appreciate you walking the folks who are here today through how you scaled up. And that's often what we see with our partners. Sometimes, depending on the campus, we will go in and immediately support all students in all courses because there is that need. But on campuses that already have other tutoring programs around campus or other academic support mechanisms, we're happy to come in and fill the gaps or provide additional support for those high DFW or historically difficult courses. And if we see, okay, it's working and students are they're asking for courses that the campus has not yet added to the Knack platform, we can collect that and share it with you. And that can help us determine how we might be able to scale up and support even more students in even more courses. So I appreciate you walking us through that.
Absolutely.
Let me slide over to the next slide for you to share
Okay,
these very recent this very recent data that was shared with you.
absolutely. So we're going to get into the data, but I also like to just point out this slide for me represents the amount of collaboration that's required to have success. And we see on our campus that student success is everyone's job. And this slide really represents that for me, that I have an awesome team that really supports and guiding this work with students, but also the collaboration with faculty and administrators. I mean, our faculties have been huge kind of motivators for our students to seek out academic support, and without them I don't think we could have done the work of just simply just sharing it with students or doing tabling events. We really have the faculty confidence to kind of recommend Knack as a support for their students and have that confidence that their students are going to improve. So I just wanted to highlight that it takes a team effort. Our partners at Knack, you guys have been wonderful in helping us to have faculty sessions, and we even as a way of building community, bought t-shirts for our Knack tutors, and that has just been wonderful, and it's just a really great sense of community. But with that, it's wonderful to kind of have that anecdotal information and to see that, but the numbers also support it as well. And you can see here that when students have regular attendance with Knack, and we have rebranded, we've rebranded Mavup Tutoring in partnership with Knack because our students feel that connection. At the University of Texas at Arlington, we have a Mavup kind of slogan there, and we just kind of branded that And thanks to my team for really coming up for that as well. But because of those, we see students are highly engaged, they have regular attendance, and then they are more successful. In fact, we have a student who was president for the day just at the lunch hour, met with him, and he actually was sharing with me just how like he was just really amazed at the work that Knack was doing. And he is actually a tutor for the program. And I had not even connected the dots. And I asked him, like, what was it that made you want to become a tutor? And he just said it was really providing the accessibility for the students, because on our campus, we used to have a library, like our library hours were open past, it was actually 24/7, and we had to change those and scale back, and our library closes kind of early. And he said at the 2 o'clock hour, he would get a number of students, 2 a.m. He would get a number of students that sought out tutoring at that time, and he still wanted to give back. And he found that this was the medium to help give back. So super excited about that. But again, just showing the numbers here for our pass rates. You can see a 6% increase for those that had regular attendance versus those that didn't have any attendance or any Knack sessions, or I should say irregular attendance or no Knack sessions. And then our retention rates have seen significant increase as well. You can see the 100% there. For our regular attendees utilizing Knack services. Now, the other university side, we do have some additional support with peer-led team learning and SI. So the university is growing and those retention rates as well. So
It takes a village to support a student, right? So we are just
absolutely.
one cog in the wheel, and that's the way we like to see it. And this data, Candice, that you and Robin have shared on pass rates and 1-year retention among students who engage with Knack tutoring is incredibly compelling, and it really highlights what we're seeing nationally across all of our partnerships, that targeted peer-based support doesn't just help them get through a single course, it does help them to stay in college. And that
Yeah.
sure speaks to the impact of how academic support, when it's truly designed for access and belonging, it can become a true driver of persistence and equity, not just remediation, which is what
Yes.
we used to think many years ago tutoring was for. Thank you for that. And let's jump into our next challenge, and that is accessibility and flexibility. I think that was a nice transition, hearing about that data. When we look at today's college students, one thing is very clear, and that's they are balancing more than ever between jobs and internships and family responsibilities, financial pressures, and increasingly hybrid or online coursework. The demands on a student's time and attention are just extraordinary. But our traditional models of support, which tend to have office hours and in-person appointments, still assumes that most students can show up between 9 to 5 on weekdays. And for many, that's just not realistic. So the disconnect is real. Even though more, as you see on the slide, even though more than 90% of institutions offer academic, career, and financial aid support, we know that nearly half of the students on campuses don't even know that those resources exist. And it's that awareness gap. It's as critical as any resource gap, because when students can't find or access support, it may as well not exist. So what we're really talking about is the need to meet students where they are, with support that's visible and flexible and seamlessly integrated into their daily experience. So one of the biggest challenges that we hear from campuses is, we know we need more support, but we just can't afford to keep adding staff or expanding hours and paying those staff when we expand the hours. And that's how Knack, we help to close that gap. rather than building new infrastructure, we help institutions unlock the capacity that already exists on campus, and that's students being able to help other students. By broadening the tutor pool, campuses can reach more learners, and that is by increasing available tutors, often by several 100% on the campuses we partner with, and extending coverage to hundreds of courses, including those that typically struggle to offer consistent support. And because on the Knack, through the Knack platform, via the Knack platform, students can meet either online on our platform any time of day or in person, we're meeting students on their terms. In fact, most of the Knack sessions happen outside of the traditional 9 to 5 window. So when tutoring centers are closed, students are still studying, and that's when they recognize that they might need help, and so that they can just jump on the Knack app and request a tutor and schedule time that fits their needs. So it's not just about adding more tutoring. Anyone can do that. It's really about scaling in a smarter way. So we make it possible to expand access and increase flexibility and strengthen student outcomes without adding administrative burden to campuses and teams that are already stretched thin. One of the biggest shifts we bring to campuses is that flexibility, both for students seeking to help and those providing it. In the traditional model, tutoring has been really bound by the limits of physical centers and fixed hours and a small team of available staff. And that means that with this traditional approach, course coverage is narrow, and training happens on a more rigid schedule. And once the term ends, support often ends with it. So we've reimagined that approach by onboarding tutors as independent contractors, which gives them full scheduling freedom, and they can offer sessions when they're available and when students actually need them. Over to the next slide. So really, it's a very simple but powerful shift in structure. By removing those structural barriers, we do make tutoring more accessible and more sustainable and far more responsive to how students actually live and learn today. So with all of that in mind, I know I've shared a lot over the past few slides, but I know you want to hear from Robin and Candice and George more than from me. I'll turn it back over to Robin to speak to how Knack's flexibility complements other campus resources. Robin?
Thanks, Paige. Yes, as you can see on that chart, 56% of our students were not using tutoring services. And you might say, well, you just weren't offering the right types of tutoring services. And let me talk with you about what those other percentage points are. So that 21%, those were our drop-in appointments. So student-to-student peer tutoring, exactly what Paige is saying, certain times, certain topics, pretty fixed. And we did have students that we still do, we still offer it. We have students that like that modality. And that 23% other section were the group sessions. So these would be our peer learning assistants, our PLAs, some of you have PALs instead, and with faculty, so supplemental instruction. And we have learning centers in academic buildings. We have a math learning center, we have a computer science learning center. And so those faculty and those PALs, or the peer assisted learning assistants, the students, they are again in a fixed location at a fixed time, and our students do still use them. We still use this avenue for tutoring, so we have a wide breadth of options for students, but Knack really has come in to fit a niche that we didn't have previously. And as you can see from the student comment, that they really appreciate that there are peer tutors that have taken the courses, they know the course content, and they can relate personally, but academically as well. Go ahead and advance, thanks. On this slide, you can see exactly again what Paige is talking about. Our campus really does run very 8 to 5. That is our culture. It is a pretty thick culture on our campus. The classes happen during the daytime. And we do have those drop-in sessions and supplemental tutoring instructions both during the 8 to 5 and afterwards. But you can see here on that heat map where our students are really accessing the Knack tutoring hours. 70% of our students using Knack are using Knack outside of that 9 to 5 period of time. And so this helps our students meet them where they're at. They're studying in the evening hours. They're studying when we're not maybe as accessible. And so that really helps our students meet that academic goal.
Yes, I always love seeing the heat map. The 70% on its own is compelling, but when you can see that spread on the Monday to Friday, 24/7 heat map, it is incredibly compelling. And I think Candice has some similar data to share. So I'll pass it over to you now.
Thank you, Paige. Yeah, so similarly, we like to think about Knack and our other services as a buffet of services for our students. But you can see with the data on the screen that 64% of our students were being served by none of the resources that we provided, which was really concerning for us. So bringing on Knack really did allow us to touch that population of students. Our traditional students are still being served by peer-led team learning. We have supplemental instruction, and then we have appointment-based tutoring. And another kind of smaller subset of a writing center, which is through our e-tutoring. And then we have a bunch of like smaller like clinics through our academic departments as well, similar to what Robin shared. But still, with all those resources, we were still not touching all of our students that needed academic support. So bringing on Knack really did allow us to offer more accessibility services. And I'll share our heat map in a second, but UTA has a very diverse population. So we have parents as students, we have working adults, and those students may have different kind of hours where we need to service them outside of the 9 to 5, but they also may have restrictions on getting to campus. So that was another restriction that we had to think about, of those students that aren't living on our campus, and how can we touch and kind of meet their needs as well. So Knack really was the vehicle to get that done. But you can see here 62% of our students are being served outside of the 9 to 5, which was really kind of enlightening for us to say, okay, there's a population that likes to study and get services when we're all resting. So this has been really great for those other students that are those kind of night owls as well. As I mentioned, our student who was the president for the day just really found an opportunity to work with other students around that same time. And I can't underscore the student to student connection. That has been huge. And I'm sure George is going to share a little bit more about that. But that has been a game changer, where it's not a professional tutor, it's not a staff member, it's not even a faculty member, but they enjoy that peer-to-peer kind of conversation and just the camaraderie. They just feel like that has been super helpful for them. So.
And there's your heat map of
Yes.
showing that 62% happening outside of traditional hours. I appreciate that you
Absolutely.
said that a lot of students just can't come back to campus, because there are a lot of centers across the country that have outside of 9 to 5 drop-in hours, but oftentimes there are things that would keep a student from, whether it's finances or family responsibilities or jobs, from being able to get back to campus after hours.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And also thank you for the lovely transition to our third topic of belonging and confidence. And I believe, George, you're up next.
Yeah, George is sitting here feeling lonely, not to make a joke about this, but we are kind of in the throes of loneliness epidemic, observers have said. And this is not just for college students, come that and hit that in a moment, but the general population at large, and not just in the United States. This began moving toward this unfortunate place, began long before COVID, but has been accelerated by COVID. And so you see on the slide here, 2/3 of students say they're struggling with not belonging, if you will, which is an issue here. And you have other data points that make perfect sense, unfortunately. That is, if you're struggling with something like loneliness or other issues, you're less likely to finish what you start. And then there's this confidence relationship between loneliness and thinking that you can do this, you can succeed, and that affects academic performance as we routinely measure it. And it's not a perfect solution, but when you ask students what they think they need a sense of belonging. They need to feel like they belong to one or more affinity groups. And in a way, that's good news. Peers know, students know that peers matter. So to the next slide, quickly. We've been looking at this, thinking about it, and I've come up with this phrase, educationally purposeful peer interactions. This a quote off to the right here by Alexander Aston, one of the most productive researchers on the college student experience dating back through the 1960s and forward. His research over decades shows that the single most important influence on student performance, particularly their attitudes and feelings of belonging, were other peers. Peers having this substantial amount of influence on when somebody chooses to study, who they take classes from, how they spend their spare time. So the way that we can put students in situations to experience more, in my jargon, educationally purposeful interactions with other students, certainly peer tutoring is one of those. And we know that if we can create this kind of culture, this network of purposeful peer interactions on a campus, it's a cost-effective, but all too often underutilized way to enrich the student experience. Paige, it's back to you.
Thanks, George. Yeah, loneliness really isn't just affecting mental health, it also affects learning. And when students feel isolated, they're less likely to ask for help and are more likely to doubt their abilities. We call this lonely learning. And that's where connection matters. Working with a peer who has been in your shoes, maybe it's another first generation student who's now succeeding, or maybe it's someone from the same, close to the same hometown as you. It can completely shift a student's sense of what's possible. And choice is a big part of that. When students can choose their own tutor, someone they can relate to and trust, they take ownership of the experience. And we like to think, and we know that that confidence carries into the classroom. And AI, we can't have a webinar or a conference presentation without mentioning AI, can we? AI is also, as we know, transforming how students learn, and it's accelerating that concept of lonely learning. And we want students to know how to use AI tools responsibly and effectively, but we also know that AI can never replace human connection. The empathy and encouragement and confidence that come from learning with and from another person, that's really what makes peer tutoring such a powerful antidote. It reintroduces relationships into the learning process. And at its core, college has always been about community, learning together, not alone with a computer. Because in the end, it's not just about learning, as we've been talking about, it's about belonging. So with that, I would love to turn it over to Robin to share how you're seeing that human connection show up in peer learning on your campus.
Yeah, and actually I'm going to start with the confidence topic. Within Missouri, S&T is better known. It's less known outside of Missouri, but within the state, we are known as being very rigorous. We have a brand problem. And so we are using these, I see you laughing, Steve. We are using Knack really as a way for us to show those lifts that you just saw, that it's okay to come here even if you're not sure, because we have the resources and the supports that can help you. And so we're trying to close that world of scariness into, this is a tangible, this is doable. And as you all know, the retention or the enrollment cliff, we're in it and we are all clamoring for students, and as are we. We want to make our university as attainable and reachable to as many students as possible, and to combat that brand image and also the stigma of tutoring. You know, the rigorously leaning students tend to not want that support or think that they don't need it. And so we are really using these great results to help our students know that they fit here and that they belong here. And as you can see from the quote, it's not just helpful for the students seeking those tutoring resources, it's also really helping those students who are tutors to be confident, to step out of their shell. Maybe they were more reserved prior to becoming a tutor. That is the type of student we have. And so this is really helping our students holistically.
Thank you, Robin. Candice, what are you seeing at UT Arlington?
Yeah, I think Robin touched on some of the same points in terms of building confidence in our students, being okay to raise their hand that they need support, whether it's because it's an intimidation or because they don't feel like they're prepared. I mean, this is really just a way for our students to have academic support that's accessible. We pride ourselves at UTA of being a student-ready campus, meaning that we don't fault our students for what they don't know. And bringing this kind of accessibility to them has been a game changer for our campus, just from the data alone, but also what we hear from our students. And you can see the quote here of being able to touch students to making them feel comfortable, bridging the gap and building that sense of community is one of our pillars in our academic success center, of making sure students know they can gain support, but they can gain a friend, they can gain a resource, they can gain a referral that they didn't even know they needed. And Knack has allowed us to do that. And you can see our users are growing, our active tutors, to Robin's point of even our tutors are seeing lots of gains in confidence and leadership building and really being able to write this on their resume. So we're seeing gains in both sides, as well as our faculty, right? And our staff, of saying we can be creative in how we offer our resources to students on our campus. And I'm sorry, Knack was just really great at doing that for us, because no one really thought about online tutoring. They were like, what is this? And, you know, now on our campus, almost 3 years later, our faculty are very confident to refer our students to this service. So it's been wonderful.
That's great to hear. Yes. And nowadays, I'll go back to that AI, saying AI again. But nowadays, if I were to ask a student what's online tutoring, they probably would say, oh, ChatGPT. I could just use ChatGPT as a tutor. So we have to reframe that. And it comes from the campus culture and the conversations we're having in the classroom and with your advisor and in the residence halls. Where do you go to get academic support? Where are you getting help? Oh, well, do you have this app? Are you using Knack? Do you have a Knack tutor? And we want to see, and I haven't mentioned this, but you can have one-off sessions with tutors on the Knack platform. But what we really like to see is when students book recurring sessions with the same tutor. So not only are the two students engaging in the subject matter, whatever the subject matter is, but you have a built-in mentor. You have someone you're working with who has been there, who has experienced the same things, and who can be a listening ear if the student needs a listening ear. So that concept of lonely learning can be overcome through the sense of belonging students and tutors feel. So I do want to move to the next slide, which is our Q&A slide. While folks are composing their questions and dropping them in the chat maybe, or if you want to do a hand raise feature, I wanted to also mention that we spend a lot of time at Knack helping to build the skills of the tutors. So George talked about HIPs, he talked about EPIs, and part of that is that we know that these students who are engaging as tutors are learning so much from the experience. So we've had for many years a skills development program that we built it in partnership with ETS, and it maps back to NACE competencies. And it is a series of self-assessment modules where tutors have the opportunity to reflect on what they have been experiencing in these roles as tutors and how they can apply it in college and beyond. But in January, we are launching a fourth stage of that skills development program where the students are actually going to provide us with artifacts. They are going to be building resumes and adding Knack to their resumes, a mock cover letter. They are going to engage in recorded mock interviews where we will have a team of folks who will assess those with a rubric for each student, and then the student can walk away with a credential that will appear on LinkedIn, and we will share it with our partners. They can share it however broadly on campus they want to share it. But we're very excited that we're adding this credential to our skills development program so that the tutors aren't just earning money and they aren't just reinforcing that subject matter knowledge, but they're also reinforcing the skills that they're building. So, what questions do we have from the folks in the audience? And these questions can be for Robin, for Candice, for George, or about Knack. Steve, I love your comment here in the chat about your tutoring experience as an undergrad.
Yeah, thanks, Paige. You know, I can just elaborate. So there are I'm trying to remember the list, George, forgive me, but there are all these great high impact practices. And when I was a first gen college student at land-grant university in the Midwest, you know, I was fortunate to do most of those before we had that language, before we were thinking about them in the way that they are. And one of them was tutoring. Boy, the university employed us to help, you know, with usually first year students. They were in introductory courses. And I just remember it being such a powerful experience. One, it helped me learn the subject better, obviously. And two, there's such a demand to help a peer learn requires a lot of sophistication. I mean, you have to be a teacher, you have to be mature and understanding and listen well. And oh, it's a heck of an experience. You know, of course, I benefited from tutoring also on the, you know, turn things around. I benefited from it. But, you know, as I reflect back, and it's been a number of years, I just think that was as important as anything else I did. And I was fortunate to do a lot of different things that were high impact, what we now call high impact practices. And I'm so glad to be in a position now. It's not a question, this is a dissertation. But I'm so glad to be in a position now to be helping others expand and have that same kind of experience today, when I think it's even more important for all the reasons this great panel has touched upon and explored today. So appreciation for that as someone who's been there, done that, and who's looking forward to seeing many others have that same experience.
I love hearing that so much, Steve. And many of you have heard me tell this story. I'm still waiting. Thank you, Ariel, for your kind comments there. We appreciate that in the chat. But tutoring has changed a lot over the years. And Steve, you can probably think back to your own tutoring experience and whatever kind of training you received. I was a tutor in college. I was at a small liberal arts college, and I was the chemistry tutor during my junior and senior years, and I received no training at all. Fortunately, I was a secondary education minor, came from a long line of educators, so it was in my blood, but I received no training. And now there is that expectation. We can't just let students just jump into these incredibly important roles. So that's why we built our training in partnership with the College Reading and Learning Association, and in accordance with ITTPC Level 1 standards. If you know, you know. If not, Google it. But it's the International Tutor Training Program certification. So we do require that tutors on the Knack platform go through that training, and we have optional training for them to attend if they want further help becoming even better in their roles.
Yeah, I've
I'm
never
not
made the cut today, Paige. I'm not saying I would. No way.
You would, you absolutely would. Now, I'm not seeing any questions coming in. I'm seeing lovely messages of gratitude in the chat, which we appreciate. But George, Robin, Candice, do you have any closing words?
Well, I would only add to what Steve said about doing things that are not on the officially approved high impact list. If they have these features that I briefly went through in terms of getting feedback and spending substantial amounts of time and so forth and so on. I mean, I have a list that I did as an undergraduate, and that is a much longer time ago than Steve did his tutoring. I'll just mention one very briefly. I had a column for the student newspaper. I was anonymous. That is, people did not know my identity. And in those days, I'm sorry to say in the 60s, you could slander and libel everyone, including the college president and so on and so forth. And I spent more time on my Valentine's Day column than any other class academic project other than my senior paper, which, by the way, I should point out is a high impact practice along with other things. But the point of this is, if you're writing for something like the student newspaper, you get lots of feedback, even before your article, gets, if it gets published, right? It's kind of a game of chance because you got a daily editor and the editor of the paper and then you get feedback from the people who read and so forth, so on. So there are a lot of these kinds of experiences that if we embedded the features that we know make a high impact practice high impact, we could do a lot more to boost student learning and completion.
Absolutely. Thank you, George. I love that. I love that story. And I wish that you could find that piece so that I could read it, by the way.
Well, here's I'm sorry, I didn't finish. The point was they cut that article by a third. I spent all this time on it, and then it made much less sense than when I put it together. And so, by the way, then I quit. I just walked away. I said, I'm not doing this anymore.
Oh,
Chiseled
goodness.
it in stone, right, George? You chiseled it in stone and they chopped off a third of that block of stone. Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I do want to quickly mention before we end our time together today, the first thing I will mention is in response to a question in here. We are happy to be in touch with anyone who's interested in learning more. If you have questions that you didn't want to pose to the whole group today, that is totally fine. We're happy to meet with you separately and on a one-on-one call on Zoom. And so we will be in touch. I'm sure we can get the list of folks who've attended today, and we can certainly be in touch with our contact information. I also wanted to mention that we will be at the conference in January, and I hope that you will join us for another wonderful conversation with Dr. George Koo in person. We will also have Scott Marzilli and Stephen Gerardo on the panel. And I hope that if you're there, you join our session. I don't recall right now whether it's on Wednesday or Thursday of that week, but I'm sure we will know soon. UERU team, thank you, Catherine, for dropping that in the chat. Julia, I'd like to hand it back over to you to close us out.
Thank you, Paige. And please join me in thanking all of our panelists for this wonderful discussion today. We are at time. We will post this discussion on our website as well. It was recorded, so if you need to refer back to it or if you want to share it with colleagues, please feel free. And again, if you found today's conversation to be helpful, the folks from Knack would be happy to follow up with you. And I hope to see many of you at the National Conference in January as well. So thank you and hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. Thank you.